Hey, Facebook friends, Marianne here. I wanted to talk to you guys about something which is basically living with chronic pain. A lot of times when we put our stuff out on social media, we're trying to show ourselves at our absolute best, and it's understandable. People that hate us look for those moments where we look horrible to try and push them out, and those of us that love us often like the packaging and really aren't looking for anything little deep. But for those of you out there who live with some form of chronic pain, I wanted to let you know you're not alone, and wanted to just get real about some of the things that I do to deal with it. Last night I had a migraine, and as what happens with migraines, they just slam you down and you are down for the count until your body decides that you're ready to go. So lucky me, woke up at 5 p.m. which is not unusual when you have a migraine. It kind of robs the day from you. But there's a lot of gifts that happen in the process. For example, you end up feeling great gratitude for daylight because it's so easy to take for granted that you have the day and you're risking about from meeting the meeting, you're enjoying your process or whatever it is you're doing, and you don't even think about how beautiful that sun is when it touches the trees and goes through the leaves, and how it lights on flowers or the faces of friends that you're working with and love or whatnot. We take so much for granted, and so within pain is a hidden invitation for appreciation. Of course, you're not really thinking about that when you're lying in the dark and going, ow. I did mention earlier on my Facebook page that one of the things that I have found that's helped me a lot in more recent years is ASMR. For those of you that aren't as much into social media, if you ever watched Bob Roth, the guy that loved the cute little trees that used to paint in the early 80s on PBS. Anyway, Bob Ross was a wonderful example of ASMR. People would click into his show and watch it for hours at a time, and they were tense, and they never had any intention of learning to paint. They just loved the sound of his voice. Similarly, there are many people today, I like to watch Ting Ting, but there are many people today who do things from doing hair, doing artwork. Some actually, there's another one called Atmosphere that I enjoy following, and she takes on whole characters. But it's that the delivery and the whispering, and it gives the brain something else to do, because when my brain is firing with all those synapses going crazy, which happens, it's like a thunderstorm, lightning storm inside the brain doing a migraine. The side effect is that my brain is coming up with all sorts of things. And actually, I found it, unfortunately, turned a painful experience into a productive experience, because my brain's firing all those synapses off sometimes comes up with pretty good solutions I've been stuck on. But when you come to, you feel like a truck has been run over you. And so what I've learned, the temptation is to sit around and to be like, oh, all day long, and act like there is absolutely nothing that you want to do, to get moving. But what I have learned is that the brain is a very malleable thing. And if you keep telling it, I can't move, I can't do anything, guess what? You won't be able to. And I'm not saying that what I'm going to tell you makes a huge difference, but what I will tell you so that people understand what I'm talking about. When I was a kid, I would be in the closet, because it was the darkest place, with a huge bowl to throw up in, and it would go on for nonstop for weeks at a time. And, it was... a friend of mine, Jim Keys, was describing migraines that he's seen others have. He's like, it's like the poltergeist. It really was. You're throwing up, you're just a mess. But, all those times of lying in the dark and just wondering when it was going to end, and as a little kid wondering why God was mad at me and all that stuff, it also allowed me to see amazing, amazing compassion. There was a doctor. Those of you that live in Dallas will know what I'm talking about. The tiny little doctor's office in a yellow building that was off of Turtle Creek, and eventually they built all these high rises around it. But for a long time, it was this tiny doctor's office. And the doctor, who was one of the last ones to come by with a little black doctor's bag, and he would just be bringing it by and, visiting kids. And I remember, this is before people really understood what migraines were. He spent all night by my bedside trying to help me deal with this pain. And I was a little kid, so I was screaming and all this stuff. And it got worse and worse, of course. And I remember waking up the next day, and this doctor was slumped over the bed, his hand on his little medicine bag. And the sweetest, most amazing thing ever. And I remember just being this little kid, about 3 years old, and just being like, oh my God, this man has just spent the night trying to alleviate my pain. And it just touched me deeply. And years later, I was sharing this story with someone, and this older man went, "That was my dad." He said, what you just gave me was really healing, because when I was at home, I'd be like, why is dad not here? Why does he not care? And you just helped me understand the gift that my father is giving so many others. He's like, that was so important, to receive that and hear that. So, a lot of times, we don't understand what's going on in other people's decision making, but sometimes they're making the world slightly better. Or in my case, greatly better, just to know someone cared. And that's one of the most isolating things for chronic pain. You feel like you aren't seen, and you're in a big room with, have you ever been in a big room where there's all this socializing going on and you just feel out of place and it's all moving? Well, that's chronic pain does that to you. And I dealt with seizures. I've had, the migraine thing, and sometimes when I'm not able to take the hemp oil, I would feel this extreme excruciating pain that made movement difficult, and it comes and goes. So sometimes I can dance for 4 hours. That's not exaggeration, I can't. Other times it feels like I need a cane to move, all depending on what the body's doing. But from the outside looking in, I look fine. I probably look pretty fine to you guys right now, although I'm not wearing my makeup. Which brings up the other thing. It is a rebellious act sometimes for me to put my makeup on, because I feel like crap. I want to just stay in bed and do absolutely nothing. But here's the trick that I have learned, is that if you give in to that feeling and you stay still and you do absolutely nothing. Now, I'm not saying go out and run a marathon when you have a chronic pain. You have to listen to the reality of your body. But there are times when I am not even leaving my house, and I have learned that there's something that happens to the mind when you still get yourself ready as if you are going to go see somebody or whatnot. And what that is you are literally telling your brain, because you've done this routine so many times with so many people, I'm going to go to a meeting, I'm going to go to a presentation in front of 300 people, 3,000 people, whatever. And your body knows and memorizes. So your body talks to your brain, and your body knows, hey, she's doing this stuff. This means that I got to get ready. I need to start thinking that I'm moving, that I'm embracing the day, this. And it's amazing what your thought does to your mindset. Let me say that again. It's amazing how your mind's thinking process and its perception changes your reality. I've had times when I swear to God, I could not move. I could not do anything. And by forcing myself to get ready, putting my makeup on, the part of my brain that's by now been hardwired into thinking, oh, this is the process that we do when we're about to get out and move in the world, it starts clicking something else in me. Because think about it. Every time you have done something, maybe for a guy, it's putting on your tie. Every time you start doing something that is very much enmeshed in your day-to-day routine, and it means signals. It sends a signal to your body saying, this is what we do when we are embracing the day, when we have something to go out and go after. Every time you do that, you fired a synapse. For those of you that don't know what that is, our brains are made of neurons. They have synapses at the end of them, and habits form all of the connections that we have between each synapse. So through your lifetime, you end up having that. And here's something else that many of you don't know. If you have a talent, like you're a good artist, maybe you are an incredibly good shot when you go hunting, with a bow and arrow or rifle, maybe you're an incredibly good dancer, whatever it is that you seem to just have a natural aptitude for, they have proven that you had an ancestor somewhere who worked and worked and worked and worked to master that. And if enough ancestors did that over time, guess what? It passed it on. That's pretty surreal, isn't it? That means that what we all think of as, as a latent talent is actually something that an ancestor worked to earn, so that synapses were formed that then eventually influenced the way DNA was passed on. So if you're someone out there and you are working really hard to master an art form, maybe it's a martial art, maybe it's an artist, maybe it's painting, whatever, guess what? You're not just doing it for you. You're doing something that will pass an aptitude on in your DNA. So that's pretty awesome, isn't it? But that's how powerful our minds are, because we are actually shaping the connection between our neurons. And if we are doing that, it's not just doing that over history and the passing on over time. It is actually doing that in your life today. So if you've spent decades, like I have as a 49-year-old woman, doing my makeup, and over the years, that has sent a signal to my body that, oh, she's about to get out there and embrace the day. We need to galvanize our energy. We need to focus the mind. We need to be prepared to do whatever task it is at hand. Guess what? That is sending a signal into my brain to say, this is the new mindset that we're in. Because if I lay down and I just don't do anything, it's sending a signal to my body that's basically saying, oh, we've been here before. This is what she did for years when she was in pain in the closet. We don't move, we feel every pain, we do this. So it's really counterintuitive, but it's powerful. And you may notice, and this is why I started doing this, as I've been talking to you, my voice is getting steadier, my energy is increasing, and part of that is because of exactly what I'm talking about. So if you live with chronic pain, like I do, I'm not saying you ignore it, because we have the reality, and it really, really sucks at the end of the day that we don't have a sign over our heads so that other people see it. Instead, they say the wrong thing, like, why? They're like, why is she so testy? Because of the pain. But it would be a lot easier, and I've learned, that's the other thing, I've learned to just be truthful with people. When I end up with this, I just post on my Facebook page, today I'm having a migraine, sorry if it inconveniences you, we'll get back to you about whatever. Or I just tell people, or I feel it coming on, or I have the seizure stuff. I'm like, okay, this is happening. If I seem out of it, this is what's going on. I am very interested in you. So I really personally believe in full transparency. It's made my life a lot easier than the years I tried to hide it, and it was like it was rude to acknowledge. That doesn't help anybody. If you tell most people what's going on, most of them will get it, and they'll actually appreciate it instead of going, geez, did I do something wrong? So what I have found, is, you acknowledge it, and you don't just acknowledge it to others, you acknowledge it to yourself. But don't let it become an excuse to make you do nothing. Because even if I don't even leave this hotel room today, doing what I'm doing now, it changes everything. And actually what I have found, and because my seizures and migraines are linked together, I also have zero desire to move around. That's a natural thing. You've been in pain. But guess what? Small, gentle walking, it starts changing the minds of the body, because when the body starts thinking, oh, we're moving now. Okay, that must mean I'm okay. That's the weird thing. We think of cause and effect, but sometimes the brain thinks of effect to cause. So when you start acting as if the underlying cause that would preclude you from doing something does not exist, it can sometimes trick the brain into acting as if, oh, it must not be that bad. So gentle walking and movement can also help. Now, again, I'm not saying go out and use a jackhammer on the street. Of course, certain things are going to, affect the brain. But it's incredible how these actions really do change the mind. My mom used to talk about putting on her makeup. She called putting on makeup war paint, because it meant that she was going out and embracing the day. And there's truth to that. We put on our war paint when we're about to go do something. We're about to go negotiate a contract. We're about to, go tackle a treaty that needs to be done. We're about to, go make some kind of presentation. It is our war paint when we're about to go embrace the day, or we think we're about to be judged by a bunch of hoity-toity, snooty people. It's our war paint. For men, it may be making sure that the right tie and the cologne and your hair is brushed just right. It is our war paint to be able, to go and embrace the world around us. But when we do it, it changes that mindset. So this is what I wanted to share with you today and I wanted to do it in a moment when I really was dealing with overcoming a migraine so you can see exactly what I mean. It is a natural thing to be dealing with chronic pain. Unfortunately, many of us deal with it. And when people see us deal with it, they often are like, well, what's their problem? They look great. But guess what? Sometimes when you're doing the actual very thing it takes for you to rebel against the pain, you end up lessening the pain. I'm not saying ignore it. I'm not saying act like it's not there. I'm saying claim your brain, not even trick your brain, claim your brain. Recognize how it works. Recognize that you can take how you feel and change your mindset by taking control of the way you shape your mind through your actions. Because action does follow thought, but sometimes action can shape the thought into making it reassess its reality. And in that case, you have the power to reshape a lot of your reality. And that is especially significant when dealing with chronic pain. And the power is if you understand that what you think shapes your reality as much as how your reality shapes your mind, you end up being not just a ride on this crazy life that you're living and this unpredictable, crazy world that we're in, you end up getting to be a co-creator in it, not just somebody at the whim of it. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't things in life that we can't control, but I am saying that if you end up recognizing how much your mindset has actually been formed from decades or years of habit, and you harness those habits to intentionally direct your mind frame towards whatever you're doing, guess what? You can take the harness and the reins a lot more than you really realize you think. So it's an invitation to all of you out there. If you're dealing with chronic pain, I'm not saying this makes it go away. It doesn't. Technically, I'm feeling the same way I was when I first began this. But you've noticed probably by now how my voice has gotten stronger, how my energy is different, how I am now ready to go out and embrace the day. It doesn't mean that anything physically has changed. It does mean that my mindset and my perception of the world has changed. And if your perception has changed in how you're navigating life, then does not, at the end of the day, change your reality. Cheers.